Hi, what I'm going to go through on this video today is how you can set up a new contact form on your site and then display that form on any page you like. Now, just because it's called a contact form, don't get stuck into thinking this is purely just a simple thing for people to put phone numbers, emails, addresses in, etc., and get you to give them a call back. It can be used for anything where you need to gather information from either a new visitor or someone that you've already been speaking with. So, first of all, what I'm going to do is create a new form, which, surprise, surprise, is done with the Create New Form button here. Okay, now just to show you, I've already got a couple in here. So if I create a new form, it then puts a new one into this list and selects it automatically, so it's ready to start editing. I'm going to rename this just example form. You don't have to, but it just means that, if you've got multiple forms, then it's easier to identify. Now, for instructors, for example, if you've got other instructors working with you and you create a page, a gallery page for each instructor, you can give each instructor their own form. Okay, so it makes sense that you actually put their name, give their form a name, so you know which one is which if ever you want to go in and edit it. Okay, so we've got the form created and we've got it set, so this is the one we're now editing. Okay, so now we can start adding some inputs to that. Now, by default, the forms already have a request for a name, a phone number, email address, and a box to put the text in. So why don't I show you how to do that? To put the form into a page on your site, you just need a snippet of code, which is this here. But what I wanted to show you is I've been working on this to try and make copying just that, it's literally, it saves you a fraction of a second. It's not a big deal, but it just makes life a little bit easier sometimes. If you copy this, click on this button here, and it will say it's copied, and what that's done is actually copied that text into your clipboard. So now, if we go to the editing, and I'll just open that in a new tab here, we'll go to editing, and we'll go to the this hidden page that I've set up, and I've hidden it by clicking this here, so that's now red. I'll click on there to edit, and literally now I just paste, which I've done with Control V, or you could do with your edit and paste up here. So that is now in the page. I then save that page. Okay, and then when I go to the site, I've already got this set up on here. If we refresh that, there we are. That is your standard form. So you've got first name, surname, phone number, email, and a message, and then just a very simple check. Okay, now these are set up in a specific way to try and eradicate spam. However, if you have a very long form and one like this here, which has over 60 inputs, you might not want those. But because there are potential issues with not having these, you just need to request that from me, and I will change that. I will remove those default inputs from the top of the form, but you do need to request that. Okay, so if we go back into the editing here, we've got the form set up, and that's showing on the site now. So what we'll do is I want to show you how to add the various elements that are available to you. So you see here we've got the options available. You've got a single line of text, a multi-line of text, radio buttons, checkboxes, drop-down menus, and HTML text. Now I've put some information on each one here just to show you what each one is and what it can be used for. Okay, so have a read of those, but what I think is probably easiest is if we just literally go and set these up so you see how they look on the site itself. So first of all, let's start with a single line text, and on there you can put a heading. So we'll just call this single line text. Okay, you can put a description, single line text description here. I'm not going to worry about the spelling mistake. Now you've got an option for each element to set it to be an obligatory input by clicking this box here, and that will mean that if it's not filled in, then the form won't send, and it will ask them to input or tick the box or whatever it happens to be. So we'll just put that in just so I can show you what it does on the form. You can also set a maximum number of characters. This can be useful, especially if you are getting spam. It just puts people off sending through rubbish. So if you've got a request for a phone number, you could set that to, I don't know, 25 characters, and it just stops them putting loads of junk in there. That's all it is, but it's not something you have to do at all, and in most cases you'll just leave that blank. Okay, so let's add this input, which is done, and you will now see down here that element is now showing up. So let's add another. Let's put a multi-line text in next. So we'll add that. For a multi-line text, you can still set as required, but all you need to do is put a heading in here, multi-line text, and add this input. Okay, and you can now see that these two are listed. So let's just go ahead and we'll just add the others. Now in a radio boxes, don't worry, I will come back to what these all do. When we actually look at the form, it will become obvious what the differences are between all of these. So we'll just put option 1, option 2, option 3. Okay, and add that. We'll do the same with the checkboxes. So checkboxes, option 1, option 2, option 3, and as you say, I mean, you can have a lot more with the checkboxes and the radio buttons. The checkboxes you can have up to 10. With some of the others, with the radio boxes, I think with the drop-down menus, you can have more. So let me just click on this to add, and we'll put in a drop-down list as well. So yes, on the drop-down list you can have up to 20 showing on there. Now if you do require more than that, it's very unlikely, but if you do, let me know. Okay, we can always have a look at making some changes to allow that. So here we'll put drop down menu, drop down list, and again we'll just put list 1, list 2, list 3. Okay, so we'll save by adding that input, and then the last option we've got is HTML text. Don't worry that it says HTML. I've just called it HTML simply because it saves confusing with these text inputs here. It's just basic text. You don't need to know HTML coding or anything like that. Okay, so I'm just going to put a header. So I'll put this is a header section, text description here. Okay, add this input. Right, so now we've got one of each of the inputs. Now you'll see this header section here is actually in bold, and I've done that purely because what you'll use that for is actually to break up the form, and it made sense to me that when you're actually using the form or trying to set it up and edit it, it makes sense that these are more obvious. Now you can change how these are ordered just by dropping and dragging. Sorry, that feature's only available on a desktop or laptop. You can't do that on a mobile, and this really is best done on a computer, simply because it can get quite long, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. So we'll just kind of change a couple of bits here just to make it more interesting. There we go. Okay, so let's see how that now looks on the site. So as you remember, we had our basic inputs here, and if we now refresh the page, you will see we've got the various elements that we've added. So single line text allows a single line of text to be input. So this is your default one. This is the one that's going to be used most of all. So you can use it for pretty much anything you like, phone numbers, or best days to contact, or anything like that. And if you remember, we marked this as being a required field, so that's highlighted with an asterisk here, and it just has a note at the top to say that those marked with an asterisk is a required field. Okay, so that's your single line of text. Your radio boxes are a group of options that they can tick or click, but they can only select one. Okay, every time they click on one, the other then becomes unselected. Alright, so they can only select one option to send through. So that's that can be useful, obviously, where you've got a number of options, but you only want one of them to be selected. Okay, so that's the radio boxes. If you remember, this is the header section. This is the HTML text input, and it becomes a header here and then description text underneath. Okay, so that's a nice way of breaking up the forms, and I'll show you that in action in just a moment on a longer form. We've then got multi-line of text. Now this allows, as you would imagine, multiple lines of text to be sent through. So this can be used, I don't know, for addresses or anything like that. Anything where when they click the shift button, it goes onto a new line, and when that comes through to you, it will come through as separate lines of text. Okay, so that's your multi-line text. Checkboxes are similar in kind of look, I suppose, to the radios. The difference is these can be ticked and you can select multiples. Okay, so if you've got various options but you want them to be able to select more than one, then checkboxes is the answer. Okay, and then lastly we've got the drop down menu or drop down list, and here this is a nice way of doing it. The radio buttons are great, but if you've got a lot of options it can become quite cumbersome, so you might prefer to use a drop down menu, drop down list, and again they can only click on one to select that. Now if you've got some options and you definitely want to make sure they've given you the correct response, what you can do is in the editing here, so let's go back to here, and on the drop down menu I'm going to edit this by clicking the edit button here. Open that up and you'll see we've got the three options in there. Now what you can do is just put something like select in here. Okay, I'm not going to bother moving these down and putting list one in for the purposes of this demo. So we'll just tick on that. Now I'm now going to refresh the page here, and you'll see that on that drop down menu select is selected. Now that gets put in automatically if you've set that to be a required field, because obviously if it's required then it's presuming that it's important to get the right information. So where that is the case, you don't need to put select in, it's done automatically. Alright, but this just prompts them to make sure that they actually do select that. Okay, and then at the bottom you've got the anti-spam kind of checker, and this is only a basic checker, but there's lots of things in the forms that especially if we have the default settings in there, that do help to dramatically reduce the amount of spam that's sent through the site. Okay, so that's your form and your various elements. Now you can mix and match and do whatever you need to do to get the form how you want. And just to show you, this is one that I've been using to test out all these new features, and one that I'm building for a Motability supplier. And you'll see how this form now works. You've got sections to break up the requests. Okay, so we've got basic information, driving license information, driving details, all kinds of stuff, and you've got a mix of, you've got drop down boxes here, you've got multi-line and single line texts, etc. So you can really build quite complex forms should that be required, and this has over 60 inputs in this field here. And you'll see at the bottom here what I've done is we've got a declaration. Now they want them to say yes, we've we accept the terms and conditions, etc., etc., and in which case these boxes would have to be ticked. Okay, if they're not ticked, then the form doesn't send, and it says you need to tick this box. So it can be useful for things if you want them to go and check your terms or whatever it happens to be. That can be quite a useful way. Okay, so that is then how you set up the forms on your site and display them. Now just a couple of other elements that can be useful. Down the bottom here you've got use form to allow reviews. Now that's covered in a separate video and really not applicable if you're allowing all this other information to come in. Okay, there's just no point. If you watch the video you'll see why. Send to additional emails, so you can all these forms will send to the admin email, okay, or the main email set in the system, but you can send it to up to two other email addresses as well. Okay, on the send actions here you can show a message that should be displayed once the form is successfully submitted, and so on the site itself they click the button, it sends the form, and it will just show them whatever message you've put in here. Okay, you can also select an alternative page to send them to, so that will just add a button on underneath the description here. So that could be quite useful if you want them to have a look at something else. So we'll get back to you ASAP. In the meantime, have a look here, whatever, and you can just put a link in there. You can also get it to send an autoresponder email, so when they've submitted the form, it sends you an email, but it can then also send them an email to say, well, thanks very much, do this, that, or the other, and this link that you've set here will be included with that text. Okay, so that's those settings there, and a couple of other ones I've done just to make life a little bit easier up here. Obviously you can delete forms should you want to, but you can now also duplicate them. So this form here, for example, that took me less than an hour to set up. However, that's still a lot of work. The original form, before I developed this system and had to do things manually, it would take me half an hour just to do a couple of basic changes. So this really is a massive leap forward as far as kind of management of your forms is concerned. But obviously if you spent that time, and you've got as we have a case here, they actually have another form that's quite similar. So what you can now do is click on the duplicate example form, for example, if we want to duplicate that. So if you've got various instructors and you want to set up a form for each one, what you do is create one that you want to set as your base, and then you can just duplicate it, and that then comes up here. So it just puts a copy at the end there, and you can then just change that to whatever you want. If you duplicate more than once, it just comes up with copy again, so you'll have a few different ones, but they all look the same in the form. Let me just show you that. If you go to duplicate, okay, and then go back to it and duplicate it again, okay. Oh, I've done that one wrong, sorry. So, okay, we now duplicate example form 2. Click on there. Okay, and so you'll see now we've got 2 called the same. They are separate forms, you just need to rename them. That's all it is. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of those, and that's it. So if you do need to get rid of your forms, then you just select it from the list, click on delete, confirm the deletion, and there we are, job done. So there we are. That's how you manage your forms. You can have unlimited forms throughout your site. If you've got if you've got your gallery, you can even have a contact form for each individual listing if you wanted to. Chances are, of course, you're not going to want to, but the options are there. So I hope that's of help. If there's anything that you feel is missing, or you want to know some more information about this, then obviously please do give me a shout. Okay, well, I hope that's helpful.